I'm happy to welcome Alberto-Horst Neidhardtom, Head of European Migration and Diversity at European Policy Center and Senior Policy Analyst. Welcome to our program.
Thank you.
Alberto, as we see 2024, we have super election year for us in Europe. EU elections in June are very important. And as the subjects are piling up for the election campaign, we see that migration issue will again be on top of this pre-election subject, but also an issue of disinformation. We called you because just before the pandemic, CPC and you yourself did a very important study, which you named fantastically Fear and Lying in the EU. So when you look 2015, 2019, 2024, what's the same, what has changed?
Thanks. This is an important question. And I would say that from a disinformation landscape viewpoint, very little has changed. We know that migration continues to be a divisive political issue, and it is still very salient. It's at the top of the European agenda at the moment, and it's only natural that voters will consider migration policy when heading to the polls this year and in the future as well. And from a disinformation perspective, we see as much disinformation today as we did see in the past on this topic. Partly because disinformation is about migrants, can be used to tap into people's concerns about the pace of cultural change, because it can be linked to anxieties about income, as well as connected to identity issues. Also, migration is a very complex topic. So again, given the circumstances, we can expect disinformation actors to continue to target migrants and refugees to further polarize societies and try to change people's vote.
You've already mentioned it, but I would like now, like an ordinary European voter who experienced inflation at its skin, who see the soaring prices, who is not sure about what's going to happen with, war in Ukraine, with Hamas-Israel conflict, with will Russia attack further or not, whatever. I'm really scared, European citizens. And then I'm from a peripheric country as, Croatia. I need a lot of foreign workers. I have huge brain drain, demographic shift, negative trend. So how can you convince me that something that I'm hearing online or on my screen is true or not about those people that are coming to invade us, which is like the main narrative still out there?
So this is also a very important question, and one that all analysts, policymakers, and regulators have been asking themselves for years. And my answer is that there is no silver bullet to address the problem of disinformation today, partly for the reasons that you were now outlining. It's very difficult to then make the ordinary citizens more informed, more alert, in a general sense. So again, lies travel fast through social media, through the internet, and it is simply impossible to take down all disinformation content, all harmful content which we find online. However, we need to think about solutions, and even though these will not be perfect solutions, we need to address the problem, because we need to keep in mind what is at stake. What is at stake is not only the well-being and the rights of persons crossing borders. What is at stake is not only the integrity of democratic institutions. It's actually the future of our countries. It's about social cohesion and making sure that our societies remain resilient in the face of foreign attacks, as well as internal attacks by actors who stand to profit from disinformation, including from disinformation about migrants and refugees.
I have to come back to your study because you've detected these three key narratives that basically build up migration disinformation, and maybe to explain to our viewers how you come to that, and when they hear and listen and see stories online, how can they just think twice, if nothing else, when they see things like this. So you've detected that migration is looked in this information space as a threat to health, wealth, and identity. How did you come to this, and what are like the keywords and the buzzwords where people can hear and see, just to maybe think twice when they read and or come up to this kind of narratives and disinformations, basically?
With pleasure. Let me, however, take a quick step back first. Mm-hmm. And let me also explain to those who are watching this program that the reason why this information is so effective has little to do with the credibility of the content of that piece of information. It has more to do with the fact that it does resonate with your values, with your beliefs, with your anxieties and concerns. And so you need to keep this in mind when you come across this information. It's not going to be evident as at first sight, or it may be obvious at first sight, and still you will pay attention to it precisely because it resonates with these concerns and values. Now, having said this, over the years, we have monitored disinformation online in several European countries, and we have noticed that the themes that disinformation actors exploit tend to be the same. And in order to make sense of what we were seeing, we came up with this categorization or taxonomy of disinformation about migrants and refugees. And we found that pretty much all the disinformation content which can be found online classifies or projects migrants and refugees as a threat to Europeans' wealth, health, and identity. And so when it comes to health, for example, all migrants are depicted as a threat to the health, as some sort of a virus carriers who do not respect social distancing, but they are also projected, and once again through lies and misleading information, as criminals who are going to take control of European cities, to somewhat demonstrate that the immigration policies of European countries are a failure. And when it comes to the other narratives, for instance, when it comes to wealth, again, baseless allegations and false stories try to project migrants and refugees as stealing all jobs, for instance, from Europeans, or paradoxically as being a burden on what are already stretched out resources of welfare states. They also typically try to claim or put out allegations that migrants receive better treatment than locals. So again, this idea of being discriminated in your own country then takes over and tries to shape public perception around migrants and refugees. And finally, indeed, we have seen that many false stories circulating online depicts migrants and refugees as an invasion force. And this is often connected to identity. So this invasion force would constitute a threat to Europeans' religious identities or to their traditions and way of living. Once again, we came across thousands of disinformation articles trying to reinforce these three frames. And likely we will see similar narratives again being pushed by disinformation actors in the future.
And we see basically some kind of also radicalization, for example, with the case of Germany now, with this, constant repetition of the word remigration and things like that. I want to ask you the responsibility of us, of media, of, I don't like the word mainstream, but let's say politicians in general in the public space, in framing, in language, in headlines that are usually the things that are under our thumb. So what would be your message as a person who was, you know, deep into, and who is still deep into the subject, to the actors that are basically still framing public discourse and public discussion?
I would answer that journalists, as much as politicians, are both part of the problem and of the solutions. So evidently, we need to put in place policies that promote media pluralism so that users and then citizens have access to a wide variety of sources. At the same time, we cannot forget that journalists should be put in a position where they can verify the content of the stories that they cover. We also, however, not have to forget that politicians also play a key role, because even though many of the disinformation stories that we have come across may originate outside European countries, then oftentimes they are amplified or further promoted by national political actors. So evidently politicians also have to play a role. And the way in which we achieve all of these is by promoting civic responsibility, as well as by introducing more effective regulations on all the various areas which are relevant. So again, from the media sphere to evidently the regulation of social corporations and the digital elements of our societies.
For the end, Europe is at difficult time, as the world is today. And we see, you know, Europe is campaigning for youth voters to come out and play. And this new voters, Gen Z, is, let's say, first full digital generation. You've mentioned a couple of times in our conversation this disinformation actors. You know, we know what we're talking about because we're into subjects, but when you put it out there for young people, for who are on TikTok, who are on all these social media, when they receive the funny videos or whatever, how can they at all be conscious about who are these disinformation actors and how are they approaching different age groups, being youth or being us or older? In regard of our subject, of course, migration.
Well, I would say that there are some common sense measures that every person can take. The first one that applies to migration, but also goes beyond it, is that we know that there are certain topics which are especially sensitive in our societies. If they are sensitive, if they are divisive, likely disinformation actors will target these topics. And so, again, we need to apply some critical thinking when reading some material that concern those topics. Then I would also encourage all readers and watchers of these TV program to consult different sources. So you don't always have to only read the same newspapers and news sources. You should diversify as much as possible. And then by consulting different stories and different sources, then you would get a different picture and you will appreciate nuances which you otherwise fail to see. And then there are specific devices which are often used by disinformation actors to manipulate public perception. And these could be statistics, for example. So if you come across statistics in an article in connection to migration, then I would look at those statistics again critically, trying to question where the statistics come from. What is the sources which is cited by the article? Are the statistics presented in a misleading way? Are they manipulated? Are they forged, invented altogether? But there are also more subtle devices which are used by disinformation actors. Oftentimes, it's enough to put a clickbait title to an article together with a picture, for example, of persons trying to cross the Mediterranean in dinghies, to already shape public perception. You may not even feel like opening the article because you already know the message that that story is trying to promote. So again, when coming across content online around these topics, it's important to always keep a critical mindset and look further than just the story itself.
And for the end, your message, because we see the debate is very passionate and we see how things are basically escalating in some places in Europe concerning the subject. So as a head of European Migration and Diversity at European Policy Center, what will be your message to European politicians for this campaign in the next 5 months? I know that, votes are important, but can there be, any ethical politics still on the subject of migration? So your message for the end.
I certainly think that there is an ethical approach to migration, but my encouragement would be to make the migration discussion evidence-based, to leave emotions outside the realm of politics. And to borrow a slogan from American politics, I think we should make migration boring again, so that instead of making decisions based on emotions and sentiments and polarizing the debate even further, we should just have a boring discussion about what works and what doesn't work. How do we actually make the most of migration opportunities? How do we protect the rights of migrants while also making sure that we find answers, concrete answers to the concerns of voters and local population? I think that would be a step further and a step forward for the next political cycle.
And as we speak, US is using Italy, Albania concept to Guatemala, and some are sending private armies to the Southern American border. So you're still an optimist.
I am still an optimist, and sadly, all of these kind of political stance ideas that are floated around do not work. They have been tried in the past. Other than raising ethical and legal concerns, they're impractical, they are costly, and they do not solve the problem at its roots. So once again, I think we should continue discussing migration, but on a different basis, not on the basis that we can find quick fixes and quick solutions, but we need to bring all the actors to the table and look at the evidence and find solutions based on the evidence.
Alberto-Horst Neidhardt, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for the invitation.